She traveled 1,500 miles in her dead mother's wedding dress to marry a man she'd never met. His letters had promised her everything: honesty, respect, a home where she'd finally matter. But when Evelyn stepped off that train, the whole town was waiting, not to welcome her, but to watch her fall apart. Because Thomas Brennan never wanted a wife. He wanted to win a $50 bet. "Get a load of this, boys," he laughed, loud enough for everyone to hear. She actually wore a wedding dress. She had 73 cents, no ticket home, and an entire town staring at her shame. That's when a quiet voice cut through the laughter. "That's enough." A stranger stepped forward, the only person in that crowd who refused to look away. What happens next will prove that the worst day of your life can become the first day of a life you never dared to dream of. This story is for every woman who was ever made to feel worthless by someone who didn't deserve her. Because you don't need someone to rescue you. You just need one moment of courage to start rescuing yourself. If you've ever been knocked down and wondered if you'd ever get back up, this story is your answer. Stay until the end. And if her journey gives you strength, share it with someone who needs to hear it too. The train whistles sliced through the Montana heat as Evelyn Harper watched the golden, dusty landscape roll by. For 3 long months, she had clutched Thomas Brennan's letters, reading his poetic words about building a future. He promised honesty and respect, a home where she would always be valued. To a woman who had felt invisible for 26 years, those words were everything. She smoothed out the cream-colored fabric of her mother's wedding dress, a chance at happiness she'd traveled 1,500 miles for, to marry a man she'd never even met. As the train slowed, she saw Cedar Ridge. It was smaller and rougher than she'd imagined, but that was all right. She was here to build a life, not step into a perfect one. Grabbing her single carpet bag, which held everything she owned, she stepped out into the crowd. A woman with 2 small children gave her a curious glance. An older gentleman tipped his hat. Evelyn's heart pounded as she searched the faces, looking for the man with the elegant handwriting. That's when she heard the laughter. It started as a low chuckle and spread like a brush fire. She turned to see 5 young men leaning against the depot wall, passing a bottle. One of them, tall and handsome in an expensive-looking vest, was pointing right at her. "Well, look what we have here, boys," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She actually showed up." The laughter roared. The man pushed off the wall and swaggered toward her, his friends trailing behind him like coyotes. "Miss Harper, I presume," he said with a mocking bow. "Thomas Brennan, at your service." This was him? This was the man who wrote those beautiful letters? "Mr. Brennan," she managed to say, her hands trembling. "I'm pleased to meet you." "Oh, I just bet you are," he smirked at his friends. "Get a load of this, boys. She really wore a wedding dress." The words hit her like a slap. All around them, conversations stopped. Every eye was on her as Thomas circled her like a prize cow at an auction. "Tell me, Miss Harper," he boomed, "did you honestly think a man like me would ever marry someone like you?" The insult hung in the thick air. "The letters," she whispered. "Oh, the letters!" Thomas howled, slapping his leg. "My dearest Evelyn, I dream of our life together. Pure poetry, right? Took me a few nights to write 'em all." One of his friends chimed in. "How much did you win, Tommy?" $50. Thomas pulled a wad of bills from his pocket. "Easiest money I ever made. Jackson here bet me I couldn't trick some lonely woman into coming all the way out here. I told him I knew just the type. Plain, desperate, and old enough to be grateful for any crumb of attention." The platform fell dead silent. Evelyn's bag slipped from her numb fingers and hit the dust. She wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but stand there while this man dismantled her hope in front of an entire town. But no words came. "Look at her," Thomas taunted. "Can't even speak. That's what you get for believing in empty promises, sweetheart. You should have known better." A few people in the crowd looked away, ashamed. But no one stepped in. They just watched, the way people do when disaster strikes someone else. It felt like the last bit of light inside her had just been snuffed out. "Well, nothing to say for yourself?" Thomas stepped closer, the smell of whiskey on his breath. He turned to the crowd like a showman. "Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Miss Evelyn Harper, a woman so desperate for a husband she'll travel across the country for a stranger. Let this be a lesson to all you foolish, dreaming women." His friends roared. The world started to spin. She had 73 cents to her name, no ticket home, and not a friend in the world. Thomas Brennan had shattered her life for $50 and a good laugh. "I'd say it's been a pleasure, Miss Harper," he sneered, "but I've told enough lies for one day. I'm sure you'll find your own way back too. That's enough." The voice was quiet, but it cut through the air with the weight of cold steel. Evelyn turned. Standing at the edge of the crowd was a tall, lean man in worn work clothes. He looked to be past 35, his face weathered by the sun. But it was his steady gray eyes that stopped her breath. They were fixed on Thomas Brennan with an unnerving calm. "This doesn't concern you, Reed," Thomas said, his arrogance wavering just a bit. "A man publicly shaming a woman on this platform concerns me plenty," Reed replied. He moved through the crowd, and people just naturally stepped aside. "You've had your fun. Time to move along." "Or what?" one of Thomas's friends puffed his chest. "You gonna make us?" Reed didn't answer. He just stood there, looking at them with those quiet gray eyes. And somehow, that silence was more threatening than any fist could ever be. "This was ridiculous," Thomas muttered, but he took a step back. "Fine. The joke's over anyway. Then go on and get—" Thomas shot him a dirty look, then snatched the whiskey bottle from his friend and led his pack away down the street, head for the street. "Come on, boys," he sneered. "Let's leave Reed to his charity case. Seems he likes his women pitiful." That last cut was sharp, but Thomas and his friends were already moving off, their laughter echoing down the dusty street toward a saloon. The crowd on the platform just melted away, turning back to their own lives, leaving Evelyn standing alone. She was in her dead mother's wedding dress, holding her travel bag in the dirt, with only the man named Reed watching her. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low. She couldn't meet his eyes, terrified of seeing pity there. Her entire body had started to shake. From a great distance, she heard herself speak. "Thank you, sir, but I'm fine. I will be fine." "You don't look it." The words were not an accusation, just a simple fact. Evelyn finally glanced up. His face showed something like real concern. She could see the fine lines around his eyes and the touch of gray in his dark hair. His hands were the hands of a man who worked hard. "I will manage," she insisted, with no idea how. "I just need a place to stay until the next train arrives in 3 days." "And you have money for a room?" His quiet question cut right through her shock. A short, bitter laugh escaped her lips. "No. I have 73 cents to my name, and a bag of clothes that are worthless. So, no, Mr. Reed, I do not have money for a hotel." She waited for him to walk away. People always scattered when faced with someone else's ruin, but Reed just gave a slow nod, as if she had only confirmed what he already knew. "My name is Caleb," he said. "Caleb Reed. I own a cattle ranch about 5 miles west of here." "That's nice for you." "There is an empty bunkhouse on my land. It's been unused for a couple of years, but the roof is sound. It has a stove and a bed. It will keep you dry." Evelyn just stared at him, confused. "I do not understand." "I am offering you a place to stay." Caleb lifted her bag as if it weighed nothing at all. "No cost. Just a roof over your head until you can decide what to do next." The kindness was so unexpected after the cruelty she had just faced, Evelyn could hardly believe it. "You do not even know me." "I know you did not deserve what happened back there. That is not a reason to help a complete stranger. It is reason enough for me." A new kind of fear tightened in her chest. Her mother had warned her about men who offered help that came with hidden costs. Thomas Brennan had already shown her how foolish it was to trust a man's promises. "Why?" she asked him directly. "Why would you do this?" Caleb looked straight into her eyes, and all she saw was a deep, honest weariness. Because you are standing here with nowhere to go and 73 cents in your pocket. Because you wore a wedding dress to meet a man who planned to humiliate you. Because every person here saw it, and no one else offered to help. He paused for a moment. And because I know what it feels like to be broken by the cruelty of others. He said that last part like it was a plain and simple truth. Evelyn truly looked at him then. She saw a man who had been knocked down by life, but had picked himself back up, losing some softness along the way. I cannot pay you, she said. I did not ask for payment. I do not know the first thing about ranching. I'm not asking you to work either. Then what is it you want from me? Caleb was silent for a second, and she braced herself for his terms. But when he finally spoke, his voice was just as steady as before. I want you to have a safe place to sleep tonight. I want you to have a chance to think without being desperate. And I want you to know that what Thomas Brennan did does not decide who you are. He shifted her bag to his other hand. That is all I want, Miss Harper. The choice is yours. But I give you my word, there are no strings attached. Evelyn looked around the empty platform. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. She had no money, no prospects, and no plan. She could refuse his offer and try to sleep in the train station. She could try to find work, but who in town would hire her after that public spectacle? Or she could trust this stranger who had shown her a moment of decency when no one else would. All right, she heard herself say. All right, Mr. Reed. I accept your offer, just until I can make other plans. The tension in Caleb's shoulders seemed to ease a little. Fair enough. My wagon is this way. He turned and started walking. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, then followed him. Her legs felt unsteady, and the wedding dress whispered around her ankles, a constant reminder of her shame. She could feel the town's eyes on them as they walked. The gossip was probably already starting. There goes that Reed fellow with the mail-order bride. Caleb's wagon was a sturdy thing hitched to 2 strong horses. He tossed her bag in the back and then offered a hand to help her onto the seat. His grip was firm. He climbed up beside her and picked up the reins. This town will talk, he said as the wagon started to move. Just so you know. Let them, Evelyn said, the bitterness in her own voice surprising her. They already think I am a pathetic fool. There is nothing foolish about accepting help when you need it. Taking charity from a stranger feels pretty foolish to me. Caleb steered the horses down the main street. They passed the general store and the blacksmith's shop. She saw the saloon where Thomas Brennan was likely bragging about his cruel joke. Evelyn stared straight ahead, refusing to look. Are you hungry? Caleb asked. The question caught her off guard. You have not eaten all day, have you? I reckon. Maybe not even yesterday. He was right. Evelyn had been too rattled to eat breakfast, and lunch was just some weak tea on the train. But admitting it felt like giving away too much. I am fine. There is food at the ranch. Mr. Reed, Caleb. She finally turned to look at him. Why are you being decent to me? He chewed on that question as the wagon rumbled out of town. Had a sister once, he finally said. Her name was Grace. She ran off when she was 19 with a fellow who promised her the moon. Turns out he already had a wife and 2 kids. Grace found out too late. Her throat felt tight. What happened to her? Took her 2 years to get home. By then, she was not the same person. She never trusted anyone again. Caleb's jaw was set hard. A fever took her 5 years ago, but the real damage was done long before that. I am sorry. The point is, I have seen what a lie does to a good person. I know how it feels to watch someone you love get broken by a man who thought it was all a game. He glanced over at her. I cannot help Grace anymore, but I can help you. That is what I am doing. They rode on in silence for a good while. The setting sun turned the prairie to gold. The air smelled of dust and sage. "For what it is worth," she said in a small voice, "I do not think I will ever trust anyone again, either." "That is fair. Trust takes a lifetime to build and a second to break." Caleb kept his eyes on the trail. "But that does not mean you have to face tonight by yourself." The ranch appeared slowly, looking like it grew right out of the land. There was a main house of log and stone, a big barn, and a few other buildings. It was a simple place, but you could tell it was cared for. Caleb stopped the wagon by the barn. "Bunkhouse is over there." He pointed to a small building. "It is clean. I will bring your bag and get the stove lit. You can wash up down at the creek." Evelyn climbed down, her legs feeling stiff and unsteady. The whole thing felt like a dream. This ranch, this quiet man offering her a safe place with no strings attached, it was too much to take in. "Mr. Reed," she began. "Caleb, I need you to understand something." She forced herself to look him in the eye. "I am not going to be grateful in the way you might expect. I will not be cooking your meals or warming your bed. I know how these things usually work." Caleb's face did not change one bit. "You are right to be clear," he said. "So I will be, too. I do not want gratitude, a housekeeper, or anything else. I offered you a safe place, and that is all I meant. No conditions. The bunkhouse door locks from the inside. You can leave first thing in the morning if you want. You do not owe me a thing. Nobody helps for free. Most folks do not." He pulled her bag from the wagon. "But I am not most folks, and you have had a rough enough day." He started toward the bunkhouse, and she found herself following him. The building was small but sturdy with a new-looking door. Caleb pushed it open and went inside to work on the stove. She just stood in the doorway and watched him. Inside was a narrow bed, a small table with 2 chairs, and the stove. It was dusty but clean, and it felt empty, like no one had been there for a long time. "It will warm up in here pretty quick," Caleb said. "I will bring over some food, just some bread and cheese and eggs." "I cannot." "You can." He stood up straight and looked at her. "Miss Harper, you have been made a fool of, left stranded, and you are probably bone-tired. You are wondering if I am just another Thomas Brennan. I get it. But you need food and rest, and I have plenty of both. Just let someone help you for tonight. You can go back to fighting the world in the morning." Her eyes started to burn with tears she would not let fall. This stranger saw right through her, and his kindness was almost worse than the shame. "Why do you care?" The question was a whisper. Caleb stopped by the door. "Because somebody should. Because what happened to you today was just plain wrong, and I cannot fix it. But I can make sure you do not spend tonight cold, hungry, and scared." He settled his hat on his head. "Is that reason enough?" Before she could think of an answer, he was gone. Evelyn stepped into the bunkhouse and shut the door. There was a simple bolt lock, and she slid it home. It worked. She sat on the edge of the bed and finally let herself cry, silent and bitter tears for everything she had lost. The hope she had was gone now, burned up on that train platform. But she was alive, and she had a roof over her head for the night. She pulled off the wedding dress and folded it. She decided right then she would burn it tomorrow. Some things are best turned to ash. A knock came at the door. "Miss Harper," it was Caleb's voice. "I have got some food for you." Evelyn pulled a blanket around her shoulders and opened the door just enough to take a basket from him. Inside was a loaf of bread, a hunk of cheese, 4 eggs, and an apple. Simple food, but it was more than she could have hoped for. "Thank you," she said. "Need anything else tonight? The main house is right there. I am a light sleeper." He started to leave, but she heard her own voice call out, "Caleb." He looked back at her. "Thank you," she said again, "for all of it." He gave a single nod and then disappeared into the dark. Evelyn locked the door and sat at the little table. She ate slowly, forcing the food down because she knew her body needed it. Outside, the Montana night came alive with the sound of crickets. She crawled into the bed, and the blankets smelled clean like cedar. She lay in the dark, listening to the new sounds, and wondered what kind of man offered help to a complete stranger, expecting nothing in return. But exhaustion was stronger than fear, and eventually Evelyn slept. She did not dream at all. Morning came too soon, with a rooster crowing and sunlight pouring through the window. For a moment she was confused, and then yesterday crashed down on her all over again. The bunkhouse, the ranch, and Caleb's strange kindness. She sat up, her body aching. Through the window she could see smoke rising from the chimney of the main house. The mountains watched over the valley, their tops still holding snow. Evelyn washed her face and looked at the woman in the small mirror. Her hair was a mess and her eyes were puffy. She looked like someone who had been broken into pieces. The wedding dress was still folded on the chair, and the sight of it made her stomach clench. She had meant it. She was going to burn it. She knew what she had to do with that letter. It had to be burned, or else she'd be carrying around proof of her own foolishness forever. Evelyn put on her most worn-out clothes, a simple gray skirt and a white blouse, her hands trembling just a little as she braided her hair. The morning air was crisp when she stepped out of the bunkhouse, filled with the smell of brewing coffee and frying bacon. Caleb was already up, crossing the yard toward the barn with a bucket in each hand. He spotted her and changed course right away. "Morning," he said, his voice steady. "Did you sleep any?" "Well enough." She hugged herself, suddenly aware of what a sight she must be. "Thank you again for your kindness." "No need for that. I heard you the first time." He set the buckets down. "I made some breakfast if you're hungry, just eggs and biscuits. I wouldn't want to be a bother. It is no more trouble to cook for two than for one. Come on now." He picked up his buckets and walked toward the house, expecting her to follow. She hesitated for a moment, then did, feeling uneasy with how calm he was. Any other man would have expectations by now, but Caleb acted like finding a strange woman on his ranch was just another part of the day. The inside of the house was simple and clean, clearly a bachelor's place. The main room was both a kitchen and a living area with a big stone fireplace on one wall. A couple of doors led off to what she figured were bedrooms. Everything was made of wood and stone, built to last, not to show off. "Have a seat," Caleb said, pointing to the table. She nodded. "Coffee, please." He poured her a cup from the pot on the stove, then served her a plate of scrambled eggs and two big golden biscuits. It smelled like the best food she had smelled in months, and her stomach rumbled loud enough for him to hear. He set the plate down without a word, fixed his own, and sat down across from her. They ate without talking for a while. Evelyn tried to be polite, but she was starving, and the food was delicious. "Better?" Caleb asked after she had cleaned her plate. "Much better, thank you. Can you cook?" The question surprised her. "A little. Nothing fancy." "I am not asking for fancy, just if you know how to get around a skillet." He poured her more coffee. "Point is, you are welcome to use the kitchen. The pantry is stocked. The offer stands. No strings attached." Evelyn watched him over the rim of her cup. In the daylight, she saw the faint scar along his jaw. She noticed the calluses on his hands and the quiet tension in his shoulders. This was a man who had worked hard his entire life. "What is it you want from me, Caleb?" He looked her straight in the eye. "I told you last night." "Nothing. Nobody helps somebody for nothing." "Then I guess I am nobody." He stood up and took his plate to the wash basin. "I have got chores to do. A fence on the north pasture needs mending. You can stay here, look around the ranch, or go back to the bunkhouse. It is up to you. Just one rule. Do not go up in the barn loft. There is a weak board up there I have not fixed yet. I do not want you falling through. That is all. That is it." Caleb took his hat from a peg on the wall. "I will be back around noon. Help yourself to whatever you need." He was out the door before she could say another word. Through the window, she watched him walk with a long, sure stride toward the barn. A few minutes later, he rode off on a bay horse, heading north. She was completely alone. Completely. Evelyn sat there for a long time, trying to make sense of it all. This was not how men behaved. They did not just offer help without wanting something in return. They did not leave a strange woman alone in their house. He had to be testing her. Maybe he was waiting to see if she would steal something so he would have an excuse to throw her out. She got up and looked around the room properly this time. The furniture was simple but well made. A clean rifle hung over the fireplace. A shelf near the window was full of books, more than she would have expected. On the mantelpiece was a photograph of a younger Caleb next to a woman who had his same eyes. That must be Grace, the sister he mentioned, the one a liar had ruined. Evelyn picked up the frame and looked at Grace's smiling face. She looked so happy, so full of trust in the world. "I am sorry," Evelyn whispered to the picture. "I am sorry it happened to you, too." She put it back and walked through the house. The kitchen was stocked with flour, sugar, and coffee. One bedroom was his, the bed made neatly. The other room was unused, the furniture covered in sheets. It was the home of a man who lived alone and kept busy, so he would not have to think about the quiet. Evelyn understood that feeling all too well. She went outside, planning to go back to the bunkhouse, but found herself walking around the ranch instead. It was a beautiful, honest place, where hard work meant something. It was everything the letters from Thomas Brennan had promised her, and everything he was not. She found a spot by a clear, cold creek and sat on a warm rock, watching the water flow. For the first time, she let herself think about what to do next. She had no money, and nowhere to go. Going back home meant facing her aunt's pity. Staying in town meant facing the shame. She could be destroyed just for someone's amusement. Or she could stay right here. She could take Caleb's offer of a safe place until she could make a real plan. It meant she would owe a man she did not know. But he had been honest with her. He said trust takes time to build, but only seconds to break. That was true. But trust also meant taking a risk, and Evelyn was not sure she had any more risk left to give. The sound of horse hooves broke the quiet. Caleb rode up on his bay horse, stepping carefully through the rocks. He got down from his horse. "I came to check on you," he said. "I wanted to make sure you had not walked back to town. Would you have stopped me?" "No, but I would have asked if you had a plan." Evelyn laughed a short, sharp laugh. "I do not have a plan. I do not have anything." Caleb sat on a nearby rock. "That is what you are thinking about?" "Among other things," she admitted. The words just came out. "I am thinking about how foolish I was to believe his letters. How desperate I must have looked to everyone on that platform." "You were not foolish. You were hopeful," he said. "Is there a difference? From where I am sitting, hope looks a lot like foolishness." Caleb watched the creek water run past their feet. "My sister used to say something like that," he said quietly. "She said hope was just setting yourself up to be disappointed." "She was right," Evelyn said. "Maybe," he answered. "Or maybe hope is just harder to hold on to when someone uses it against you." He picked up a smooth stone from the ground. "For the last 5 years of her life, my sister Grace was sure the world was cruel. She believed everyone was out to hurt her. And she was not entirely wrong. But she also missed the few good things that came her way because she could not believe they were real." "What good things?" Evelyn asked. "Friends who wanted to help. A town that would have welcomed her back. A brother who would have done anything to make her safe again." Caleb's jaw was tight. But she could not accept any of it. She could not trust. So she lived alone and angry, right up until the fever took her. Evelyn looked at him. "Do you think I will end up like her?" "I think you have a choice to make," he said. "You can let what Thomas Brennan did ruin the rest of your life. Or you can decide he does not get to have that power over you. I'm not telling you to trust me. I am just saying, do not let one bad man convince you the whole world is bad." "The whole town stood there and watched," she replied. "I did not." His simple words hung in the air. Evelyn wanted to argue. She wanted to say one man stepping up did not cancel out the dozens who did nothing. But she could not find the words. "Why did you help me?" she asked instead. "You did not know me." "I did not need to know you to see it was wrong," Caleb said, tossing the stone into the creek. "I could not just stand there and watch. Not after what happened with Grace. Not after I saw what it did to her when nobody helped." So I am just a way for you to save your sister? No, he said plainly. You are a person who needed help. I was able to help. That is all. Evelyn wanted so badly to believe him. She wanted to think his reasons were that simple. But trust was not so easy anymore. What happens when you decide you want something in return? Then I will tell you, and you can decide what to do, Caleb said as he stood up. But that is not today. Today, I am just offering you a place to stay and a meal to eat. We can worry about tomorrow when it gets here. He walked back to his horse. You are welcome to stay as long as you need, Evelyn. No expectations. He rode away before she could answer, back to whatever work was waiting for him. Evelyn stayed by the creek for a long time, thinking about choices and trust. When she finally walked back to the house, the kitchen was just as she had left it. Caleb's breakfast plate was still in the wash basin. The pantry was unlocked. It proved he was a man who meant what he said. Evelyn washed the dishes. She did not know why. It was not because she felt she had to. It was more a need to do something useful. She wanted to prove to herself that she could still contribute something. She was putting the last plate away when Caleb came in, covered in dust and looking tired. He saw the clean kitchen and paused. You did not have to do that, he said. I know. I wanted to. He nodded, as if he understood. I appreciate it. I will make us some dinner soon. I can cook, Evelyn offered. It would feel good to do something normal. The kitchen is yours, he said. She made a simple stew with beef, potatoes, and carrots from the pantry. Caleb sat at the table, quietly cleaning his rifle. The silence between them was not uncomfortable. They were just two people in the same room. They ate dinner together, and Caleb told her the food was good. He then asked if she had thought about what she would do next. Not really, Evelyn admitted. I still do not know what my options are. Well, you can stay here as long as you need to. That option is always open. And do what? I cannot just live in your bunkhouse forever. Why not? He asked, and he seemed to truly mean it. Evelyn just stared at him. Because people do not do that. People do all sorts of things, he said. The only question is what works for you. Caleb pushed his empty bowl away. Look, I am not trying to trap you. The facts are simple. You need a place to stay. I have a place. You need time. I can give you time. It does not have to be more complicated than that. It is always more complicated. It does not have to be, he insisted. You say that now, but you will want something eventually. Everyone always does. If that day comes, I will tell you. We will handle it then, Caleb said, clearing the table. Until then, let us just take it one day at a time. That night, Evelyn lay in her bed and thought about his offer. Day by day, it sounded too simple, but maybe simple was what she needed. The days fell into a rhythm. Evelyn would wake up early and make breakfast. Then she would find work to do around the house, like washing clothes or organizing the pantry. She did it because staying busy made her feel useful. Caleb worked on the ranch and was usually gone for most of the day. He gave her space, but always made her feel welcome in the main house. They ate dinner together most nights. Their small talk slowly grew into real conversations. She learned that he had inherited the ranch from his father 10 years ago. He had run it all alone since his sister Grace died. He usually preferred books over people. He learned that she used to be a seamstress. She had lost her parents before she was 25. She answered the advertisement for a bride because she wanted a place to belong. Do you still want that? Caleb asked her one evening. A place to belong? Evelyn thought about it. I do not know anymore. Maybe wanting it so much is what made me an easy target for men like Thomas Brennan. Or maybe wanting it is just human, Caleb said. And men like him are just evil for taking advantage of it. A week passed, then a second one. Evelyn started to settle into the quiet life on the ranch. She learned its sounds and its pace. The rooster crowing at dawn. The sound of Caleb's saddle as he rode out. The smell of coffee in the morning. It was a peaceful life, something she had never known before. There were no crowds, no noise, and no one judging her. But Evelyn was learning that peace did not mean she was safe. It just meant the danger had not found her yet. She was hanging laundry to dry one afternoon when she heard loud, rough voices coming from the road. Her hands froze on the shirt she was pinning to the line. A cold fear ran through her. 3 riders appeared. Evelyn instantly recognized the man in the lead. It was Thomas Brennan sitting on his dark horse with a grin on his face. Her first thought was to run and hide in the bunkhouse, but she could not move. She just stood there, frozen by the clothesline. Her heart hammered as she watched them ride up. Thomas stopped his horse about 20 feet away, his buddies on either side of him, all of them looking like they'd started drinking early. "Well now," Thomas called out. "I heard a rumor you were out here, but I didn't believe it. Figured you had more pride than to shack up with a fella like Reed." Evelyn's hands tightened on the wet laundry. "Leave," she said, her voice low. "Is that any way to greet an old friend?" He swung down from his horse, a little unsteady on his feet. "We had plans, remember?" "You're drunk, Thomas. Go on home." "I'm celebrating," he sneered. "Just won $50. Bet my cousin you'd end up selling yourself to whoever would take you in. Looks like I was right." The insult stung, but she stood her ground. "I'm just doing laundry. Now get out of here." "Or what? You think Reed is going to protect you?" Thomas laughed. "You think he gives a damn about some desperate spinster nobody else wanted?" "I think you're trespassing," a new voice cut in. Evelyn turned to see Caleb walking out of the barn. "And I reckon you have about 10 seconds to get back on that horse and ride out before I make you." Thomas's grin slipped. "Just came to check on my investment, Reed. Make sure you're taking good care of her." "She's not your investment," Caleb said, his voice flat. "She's not anything to you, and you're still on my land. Was humiliating her in public not enough for you?" "Had to take her home like some charity case," Thomas shot back. "What's the matter, Reed? Can't find a woman who'd have you otherwise?" Caleb walked across the yard, his calm making him seem even more dangerous. "You've got 5 seconds." "Or what? You gonna shoot me?" Thomas pulled a flask out and took a long swig. "We both know you ain't got the stomach for it. Too busy playing the hero." He never finished. Caleb moved faster than a striking snake, closing the distance and yanking Thomas away from his horse. The flask dropped, spilling whiskey into the dust. "Get out," Caleb said, his voice quiet but full of steel. "All of you, now." Thomas's friends looked at each other, suddenly less interested in the show. But Thomas, drunk and foolish, shoved at Caleb's chest. "You don't tell me what to do." Caleb didn't bother with a big swing. He just grabbed Thomas's arm, twisted it up behind his back, and marched him right to his horse. Thomas yelped and cursed, but Caleb just shoved him hard into the saddle. "If I see you on my property again," Caleb said, his voice dangerously calm, "I won't waste time talking. Am I clear?" Thomas's face was beet red with fury. "You think you're better than me? Saving this woman don't make you a saint." This time, Caleb did hit him. It was a short, sharp punch that split Thomas's lip. "Are we done here?" Thomas spat blood on the ground, his eyes promising murder. But his friends were already turning their horses. "This ain't over, Reed." "Yes," Caleb said, "it is." They rode off, Thomas glaring back over his shoulder. Evelyn stood there shaking as Caleb watched them disappear down the road. When he finally turned to her, his expression had softened. "You all right?" She tried to speak, but the fear she'd been holding back washed over her, and her knees gave out. Caleb was there in an instant, holding her steady. "Hey, you're safe now. He's gone." "He called me," she whispered, unable to finish the sentence. "He's a drunk fool saying drunk fool things," Caleb said firmly. "Don't you give his words any power." But it was the certainty in Thomas's eyes that scared her. The belief that he could destroy her without facing any consequences. "He's going to come back, isn't he?" she whispered. Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Maybe, but if he does, I'll handle it." "You shouldn't have to. This is not your fight." "You're on my land," he said simply. "That makes it my fight." He helped her inside and poured 2 cups of coffee, strong and black. Evelyn's hands trembled as she held the warm mug. "I should leave," she said. "This is my fault." "If you weren't here," Caleb said, sitting across from her, "Thomas Brennan would still be a mean-spirited drunk. The only difference is you wouldn't be someplace safe. Don't let him run you off, Evelyn. That's what he wants. What he wants is to humiliate me, and he'll use you to do it. Let him try." The conviction in his voice made her look up. He met her gaze with his steady gray eyes, and she knew he meant it. He would stand up to Thomas, not for any reward, but because he'd given his word. "Why?" she asked. "Why does this matter so much to you?" Caleb took his time answering. His time. "Because I'm tired of watching good people get broken by bullies. Because someone has to stand up to men like him. And it might as well be me." He stood and looked out the window. "And because you deserve better than to live your life running scared." He turned back to her. "If I let him run you off my land, then I might as well have left you on that platform in the first place. And I will not do that." Something shifted inside her then. It was not quite trust, but it was the start of believing that Caleb Reed was exactly what he seemed, a decent man. "Thank you," she said. He just nodded. "Finish your coffee." For 3 weeks, an uneasy peace settled over the ranch. The threat of Thomas was always there, making Evelyn jump at every strange sound. Caleb noticed, but said nothing, simply keeping his rifle close and making sure she was never left alone. In those quiet days, Evelyn found herself slowly letting her guard down. The trust grew in little ways, almost too small to notice. She stopped locking her door at night. She started leaving her things out instead of keeping them packed. She started to think that maybe, just maybe, a man's kindness could be exactly what it appeared to be. But safety on the ranch was one thing. The world outside was another. When Caleb said they needed to ride into Cedar Ridge for supplies, Evelyn argued against it. It was her first time going back since she had been publicly shamed. "You cannot let him make you a prisoner on my ranch," Caleb had said, his logic impossible to argue with. So she climbed into the wagon beside him, her stomach in knots. Cedar Ridge looked the same, but it felt entirely different. She knew the people there had watched her fall apart and had done nothing. Caleb pulled the wagon up to the general store. "You want to wait here?" he asked. Through the window, she could see Mrs. Patterson, the storekeeper. She was the same woman who had whispered behind her hand while Thomas had ruined Evelyn's reputation. "I'll come in," Evelyn said. Caleb gave a small nod of approval. They walked in together, his presence a silent source of strength. Mrs. Patterson's eyes widened when she saw them. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice stiff. "Miss Harper?" "Mrs. Patterson," Caleb replied, pulling a list from his pocket. "We need flour, sugar, and coffee." The woman's eyes kept darting to Evelyn, her face a mixture of curiosity and judgment. "Of course," she said. Then she paused. "How are you finding life on the ranch, Miss Harper?" The question was full of meaning. Everyone in that store knew what she was really asking. "It is honest work," Evelyn answered, her voice even and clear. "I appreciate Mr. Reed's kindness in giving me a place to stay while I consider my options." "I see," Mrs. Patterson said, unable to hide her smirk. "And have you considered them yet?" Mrs. Patterson's face soured, but she got the supplies without another word. As Evelyn waited, other folks trickled in. An old farmer, 2 women who hushed up the second they saw her, and a young man whose gawking was cut short by Caleb's hard stare. Evelyn kept her head high, hiding the knot in her stomach. Just as they were loading the wagon, a voice dripped with venom. "Well, well, look what the cat dragged in." Evelyn froze, her hands tight on a sack of flour. She turned to see Thomas Brennan, leaning against a saloon post with a drink in his hand before noon. His busted lip had healed, but his pride was still plenty sore. "Keep walking," Caleb said, his voice low. But Thomas was already moving toward them. "What's the matter, Reed? Scared I'll tell everyone how you're sharing your bed with my leftovers?" The whole street went dead quiet. Folks stopped in their tracks, hungry for a show. Evelyn felt their eyes on her, feeling the heat of their judgment. And something inside her finally broke. For 3 weeks she had let fear run her life. letting Thomas Brennan make her feel small. She was done being small. "He offered me a roof over my head," she said, her voice ringing clear across the dirt street. "He showed me kindness when this whole town just stood by and watched you try to break me for fun. That's more decency than you've ever known." Thomas's smile curdled. "Kindness? Is that what you call it when a man takes what he wants?" "The only person who took anything was you," Evelyn shot back, stepping forward. She saw a flash of surprise on his face. "You wrote those letters, made all those promises. You brought me here just to destroy me for a bet, and when you were done, you tossed me aside like trash." "You were trash," he sneered. "Maybe," she said, shaking now with pure rage, "but you're a coward. You get your kicks from hurting people who can't fight back. That don't make you a man, it just makes you a bully." Thomas's face went beet red. "You watch your mouth." "Or what?" she challenged. "You've already done your worst and I'm still standing. But you?" Her gaze swept over him, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You'll spend the rest of your sorry life being a small, cruel man who has to tear folks down to feel tall. And every person in this town knows it." The silence was absolute. Thomas looked around at the watching faces, and for the first time, a flicker of doubt crossed his own. He expected her to crumble, but she was standing tall, tearing his story to shreds. "You think you can talk to me like that?" he stammered, his voice weak. "I just did. And if you've got a problem, I reckon the law would be mighty interested to hear why you brought a woman all the way out here as part of a wager." Thomas's hand twitched toward his gun. A gasp went through the crowd. But before his fingers even touched the leather, Caleb was there, stepping right between them. "You pull that gun," Caleb said, his voice quiet as a snake in the dust, "and I'll put you in the ground. We both know it." "She insulted me." "She told the truth. If you can't handle it, maybe you ought to look at the man in the mirror." Thomas's hand fell away from his pistol, but his eyes burned with hate. "This ain't over." "Yes, it is," Caleb said, his tone making it a fact. "You've had your fun. You come near her again, you so much as breathe her name, and you'll answer to me. Are we clear?" Thomas stared, sizing Caleb up. He might have been meaner, but Caleb had a dead-sure certainty that Thomas couldn't match. He finally broke, sneering as he looked away. "She ain't worth the trouble." Thomas spit in the dirt and stomped back to the saloon, his cronies following like puppies. The crowd started to break up, murmuring amongst themselves. Evelyn stood there, her hands clenched so tight her nails dug into her skin. "You all right?" Caleb asked softly. I think so." Her legs felt like jelly. "I can't believe I did that." "I can. You got more backbone than he'll ever have." Caleb gently touched her elbow. "Come on, let's go home." The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Caleb let her be, letting her mind settle. She had faced him down in front of everyone. She had taken her story back, and she had survived. "Thank you," she said as the ranch came into view, "for stepping in. You handled it yourself." He was going for his gun. "He was thinking about it," Caleb said with a glance. "A man like Thomas is all bluster. He's used to people being afraid." "I was afraid." "Fear ain't the same as being a coward," Caleb said. "You were scared, and you stood your ground anyway. That's called courage." Evelyn had never considered herself courageous. Foolish, maybe, but not courageous. Back at the house, Caleb made coffee. "You think he'll let it go?" she asked, looking out the window. "A man like that holds a grudge," Caleb said, wrapping his hands around the warm mug. "But what you did today, that bought you something. The town saw you stand up for yourself. They saw him back down. In a place like this, that counts for a lot." "Does it?" "They all think I'm—" She trailed off, unable to say the word. "Let 'em think what they want. You and I know the truth. That's what matters." But Evelyn wasn't so sure. Reputation was everything in a small town, and hers was in tatters. "Maybe I should just leave," she said quietly. "Go somewhere no one knows me." Caleb was silent for a long moment. "Is that what you want? To run?" "I don't know what I want anymore." "The past follows you," Caleb said, setting his cup down. "But that don't mean you can't build a new life right where you stand. Look, Evelyn, if you want to leave, I'll help you. I'll buy your ticket myself. But if you're leaving because you're scared, then you ought to think twice." "Why?" "Because you already did the hardest part. You faced down the man who hurt you and told your truth to the whole town. Running now would just be a waste of all that courage." Evelyn looked out at the quiet ranch, at the mountains standing guard. This place was starting to feel like a possibility, a place she could finally breathe. "What if he comes back looking for trouble?" "Then we'll handle it," Caleb said, his voice as solid as the mountains. "You can't live your life dodging shadows. You just gotta deal with things as they come." "That is easy for you to say. You are not the one everyone thinks is a fool." The word hung in the air. Caleb did not even blink. "No, I am not. But I am the man they are all whispering about, wondering what kind of deal we have made. The difference is, I do not give a damn what they think. I know who I am. Their gossip does not change a thing." "How?" she asked, her voice small. "How do you not care?" "Practice, and knowing the only folks whose opinions matter are the ones who know the truth." He walked over to the window. When my sister Grace came back, she was consumed by what people were saying. That worry just ate at her, made her smaller and smaller until there was almost nothing left. "I'm so sorry." I watched her let their judgment destroy her, and I swore I would never live that way. He turned back to her. "You do not owe this town any explanations. You do not have to prove anything to them. You just owe yourself the chance to live your own life." Evelyn desperately wanted to believe him, but her reputation was all she had ever had. "I do not know if I can do that," she said. "Then start small. Just get through today without letting them get to you. Then do it again tomorrow. It gets easier." That night, Evelyn lay awake in the bunkhouse thinking about what Caleb had said. She had spent her whole life running away from things like poverty and loneliness. Thomas Brennan's letters had looked like an escape, but they were just another cage. Maybe this was the real escape. Not a fantasy, but the simple, honest work of building something real day by day. She was still thinking about it when she heard them. Horses, 4 or 5 of them, coming up the road to the ranch at a full gallop. Her heart started pounding in her chest. It was well past midnight. Folks do not come calling after midnight unless they are bringing trouble. She threw on her dress, her hands shaking as she buttoned it up. Through the small window, she saw a light flick on in the main house. Caleb was awake. He must have heard them coming too. She opened the door to a night full of bad intentions. Stepped into the yard as the riders appeared, their torches cutting through the night. Thomas Brennan was at the front, and Evelyn could see he was drunk. The 4 men with him were all armed. This was the trouble Thomas had promised. Caleb walked out of the main house with his rifle, placing himself between the men and Evelyn. She wanted to run behind him, but her feet carried her forward until she was standing right beside him. "That is close enough," Caleb called out when they were about 50 feet away. Thomas stopped his horse, a nasty grin on his face. "I just came to collect what belongs to me, Reed." "Nothing here belongs to you, Thomas." "Oh, I think she does. I paid good money to get her out here. I figure she owes me something for the trouble." "You paid nothing. You made a wager and ruined a woman's life for a laugh. Now you will turn around and ride away before this gets ugly." One of Thomas's friends laughed. "It is 5 against 1, old man. I like our odds." "It is 5 against 2, Evelyn said, her own voice sounding surprisingly steady. "And Mr. Reed is a better shot than all of you put together." Thomas's grin got wider. "Listen to that, boys. Already protecting her new keeper. How touching." "This is your last warning," Caleb said, his voice flat. "Leave now, or I will start." "You won't shoot. You're too civilized." Thomas and his friends swung down from their saddles. "That is the difference between us. You worry about rules, I just take what I want. He swaggered forward and Caleb leveled his rifle. One more step. Thomas took it. A shot cracked the night air and Thomas's hat flew clean off his head. He stumbled back, pure shock washing over his face. "The next one goes in your chest," Caleb said, his voice steady. "Your choice." The second shot kicked up dust right between Thomas's boots. His buddies were already scrambling for their horses, their courage gone with the gun smoke. "I am done talking," Caleb said. "You have 10 seconds to get on those horses. After that, I stop aiming to miss." Thomas shot a look at Evelyn, his eyes full of hate. "This is not over." "Yes, it is." Evelyn stepped up and she saw him flinch. "You lost, Thomas. You lost when you tried to humiliate me, and you lost when I stood up to you in town. Now you're losing again, standing here while your friends ride off." "You are nothing," he spat. "You will always be nothing." "Maybe so, but I am the nothing who faced you down. What does that make you?" Thomas's hand twitched toward his pistol, and Evelyn heard the simple click of Caleb's rifle. "Do not," Caleb said softly. For a second it looked like Thomas might just try it, to make this a tragedy instead of a public shaming. But then his shoulders slumped. "This is not over," he repeated, but the words were empty. "It is," Caleb said. "And if I see you on my land again, if I even hear you have been near Miss Harper, I will hunt you down. You will wish I had just shot you tonight. Are we clear?" Thomas did not answer. He just stumbled to his horse and hauled himself up. His hat lay in the dust, a perfect hole in the crown. He rode off into the night, leaving what was left of his pride behind him. Evelyn and Caleb stood there until the sound of hoofbeats was gone. Caleb lowered the rifle. A man like Thomas needs to live with being beaten. Dying would be too easy. As they walked back to the house, Evelyn felt a change deep inside her. Thomas Brennan had come with threats and anger, and she had met him head-on. She had stood her ground instead of running, and she had won. "Thank you," she said when they reached the porch. "For what?" "For not shooting him, for letting me stand beside you instead of hiding me." Caleb looked at her in the moonlight, and something passed between them. It was not just thanks, and not just attraction. It was recognition. Two people life had tried to break, who were choosing to get back up. "You earned that," he said. "You earned the right to face him. I was not about to take that from you. He might press charges for you shooting at him. On my own property, defending my home from armed men who would not leave. The law would laugh him right out of the sheriff's office." Caleb held his coffee cup. "Besides, his father has a reputation. He does not need the whole town knowing his son gets his kicks from terrorizing women." Evelyn sipped her coffee. "I called myself nothing tonight. I heard." "Is that what you think I am?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "I think you are someone who has been told she is nothing so many times." She started to believe it. "I think you are stronger than you know, and braver than you think. You are worth a whole lot more than men like Thomas Brennan could ever understand." The words settled over her like a warm blanket. People had called Evelyn many things, but never worthy. "I do not know if I believe that," she said softly. "That is all right. I will believe it for both of us until you catch up." The night was quiet again. "Sleep well," he said at her door. "You too." But Evelyn did not sleep. She lay there thinking about the look on Thomas's face when his hat went flying. She thought about standing in that yard, choosing her own words instead of cowering. She thought about Caleb, standing right there beside her. For the first time since she arrived, Evelyn felt something besides fear. She felt possibility, a feeling that maybe she could build a life here. Not the life she had imagined, but something real, something she had earned. Morning came with birdsong and the smell of coffee. Sometime in the night, she had made her choice. She would stay. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because she wanted to see what she could become on this ranch with this quiet man who gave her space to find her own strength. Making breakfast. He looked up as she came in, his gray eyes studying her. "You look different," he said. "I feel different." Evelyn poured some coffee. "I want to stay, if your offer is still open." It is open, but not as charity. I want to work, to really work. Learn this ranch and earn my place. She met his eyes. I need to be building something, not just hiding. Caleb put down his spatula and faced her. Are you sure? Ranch work is hard. It is long days and no promises. I am sure. He watched her a moment longer, then nodded. All right, we will start today. But I am going to work you hard, Evelyn. If you are doing this, you are doing it right. I would not expect anything less. Over breakfast, he told her what needed doing. Fences to mend, cattle to check, a garden that had gone wild. The list was long, but Evelyn felt a spark inside her she had not felt in a long, long time. Purpose. Within the first few hours, her back ached. The sun was not even high in the sky yet, and she was soaked with sweat. But she did not stop. When Caleb finally called for a break, Evelyn sat in the shade of the barn and looked at her raw, red palms with a kind of pride. These were honest wounds earned through honest work. They were proof she was doing something that mattered. How are you holding up? Caleb asked, handing her a canteen of water. I hurt everywhere. That will pass, he said, sitting beside her. You can stop any time. You do not need to prove anything to me. I am not trying to prove anything. I am trying to learn. Fair enough. But listen to your body. The ranch will be here tomorrow. They worked until the sun went down. Evelyn could barely drag herself back to the bunkhouse. She washed up with cold water, wincing as the soap stung her blisters, and fell into bed without even changing. She had never been so tired in her whole life, and she had never felt so good. Further than she ever thought she could. He taught her how to read the patterns of the land and the cattle. He showed her how to fix things before they broke for good. Most of ranching is just paying attention, he told her one afternoon as they were mending a fence line. You see something starting to give way, you fix it then. You wait too long, and a small problem turns into a disaster. Sounds a lot like life, Evelyn said, pulling the wire tight. Exactly like life. She learned how to ride a horse, though at first she spent more time on the ground than in the saddle. Caleb never laughed. He would just help her up and show her again how to move with the animal. By the end of 2 weeks, she could manage a steady ride. You are getting the hang of it, Caleb said, watching her. I am awful, and you know it. You are learning. That is not the same as being awful. The little garden started to come back to life under her care. She pulled the weeds and turned the soil, planting vegetables that might grow before the first frost. Working in the dirt felt honest and real. It connected her to something solid. Sometimes, when Caleb was working in another part of the ranch, Evelyn would start making the supply runs into town. Her heart pounded something fierce that first time, always looking over her shoulder for Thomas Brennan. She only saw him once, clear across the street, and he looked away fast. The townfolk kept on whispering, of course, but their sideways glances and hushed talk bothered her less and less. One evening, about 6 weeks later, she and Caleb sat on the porch watching the sunset. Can I ask you something personal? Evelyn finally said. Shoot. How come a good man like you with this fine ranch never married? Caleb got real quiet for a spell. Was engaged once, a long time ago, girl named Sarah. We had it all planned out, gonna join our family ranches. He trailed off. Then she met my father's lawyer. Man had more education, better prospects. Her family thought he was the better deal. She called it off 3 weeks before the wedding. Oh, I am so sorry. Don't be. It was for the best. What we had was just convenience, not real love. He stretched his legs. After that, I just poured myself into this place. Figured if marriage was meant to be, it would happen. He looked over at her. What about you? Before Thomas, did you want a husband? Evelyn thought on it. I reckon I wanted to belong somewhere more than anything. Marriage just seemed like the way to do it. But maybe belonging is just about showing up and doing the work. Is that what you are doing here? Caleb's gaze held hers. I think you are building a life, Evelyn. Whether you belong in it is up to you. The air grew thick with unspoken things. She realized this deal of theirs had turned into something more than temporary, a temporary place to a permanent one. This was her future. She looked at him and said, "I would like to stay. Not as a guest, but as a full partner in this ranch. If you will have me." Caleb's face remained steady, but his voice was kind. "I would like that very much. But being partners means we share everything. Equal say, equal work, and an equal stake. Are you sure you want that load?" "I am sure." "Then we need to make it proper. We will see the lawyer in town and draw up papers. You will have a legal claim to half of this ranch." Evelyn was stunned. "Caleb, no. That is far too much. You have earned it with every fence you mended and every hour you worked to make this place better." He stood over her. "Besides, if anything should happen to me, you will have protection. You will have a home that no one can take from you. Nothing is going to happen to you." "Probably not. But I saw my own sister lose everything because she had no legal standing. I will not let that happen to you." Evelyn had come here with nothing. Now she was being offered security she had never imagined, and the respect of a man who saw her as his equal. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this for me?" Caleb sat down again. "Because you have proven your worth. Because I trust you. And this ranch is too much for one man to handle alone. I would rather have a partner I respect than struggle by myself out of foolish pride." He paused for a moment. "And somewhere along the line you became a good friend. I take care of my friends." Tears welled in her eyes. "I do not know what to say. Just say you will think on it. We can go to town next week and talk to the lawyer. There is no rush and no pressure. Just be certain this is what you truly want." She already knew. This feeling was not a fantasy like the one Thomas had built with his letters. This was real, built on hard work and the slow building trust between two people who understood what it meant to be broken. That night, she thought about how strange life could be. Just 2 months ago, she was being ruined for sport. Now a good man was offering her a home, asking for nothing but honest work in return. Life was cruel, but it could also show an unexpected kindness. The next morning, Caleb had 2 horses ready. He told Evelyn they were riding to check the north pasture. It was a long ride, but she settled into the saddle with a new confidence. They rode in a comfortable quiet, moving through fields of wild flowers, with mountains in the distance. Evelyn breathed the clean air and felt a tightness in her chest finally let go. "It is a beautiful sight, is it not?" Caleb said. "It is. I never knew land could feel so big. It takes some getting used to, but I always found it freeing. It is hard to feel trapped in your own mind with this much space around you." They spent the morning checking the herd, making sure the water was clean and looking for any sick animals. It was slow, careful work, and Evelyn enjoyed its rhythm. Around noon, they stopped by a creek to rest and eat. Caleb lay back in the grass while Evelyn sat on a rock watching the water. "Can I ask you something personal?" she said. "Go right ahead." "About that night Thomas came with his friends. You could have ended him. Why did you not?" Caleb looked at her. "For a couple of reasons. First, taking a man's life changes you. It leaves a brand on your soul, even when it is justified. Second, letting him live meant he had to face his shame. He had to go back to town knowing the woman he tried to break had beaten him. A dead man learns no lessons, living with your failure now that teaches you something." "Do you think he learned anything?" "Probably not. A man like Thomas does not often learn, but now he knows there are consequences. He knows not everyone will let him get away with being cruel." "I am glad you did not kill him," she said. "Not for his sake, but for yours. You have already done so much. I have not done anything you would not have done for yourself if you had the time and safety. You gave me that time and safety." Caleb studied her. "You are different now, stronger. I feel different. I feel like I am becoming the person I was meant to be." "And who is that?" She thought for a moment. "Someone who does not apologize for being alive. Someone who does hard work and earns her sleep. Someone who can face down a cruel man and not fall apart." She smiled. "Someone a lot like you, I suppose." They rode back to the ranch, tired but pleased with their work. This was her home. These were her cattle. The following week, they went to Cedar Ridge to see the lawyer, Mr. Harrison. He was an older man with kind eyes. He listened to Caleb, looked at Evelyn, and then drew up the papers to make her a co-owner of the ranch. "This is unusual," he said while he worked, but not unheard of. "Are you certain about this, Mr. Reed?" "I am certain." "And you, Miss Harper? You understand this gives you equal claim to the property and equal responsibility for it?" "I understand." "Very well." He finished writing. "Sign here, both of you." Evelyn's hand trembled as she took the pen. This was real and permanent. She was tying herself to this land and this man. She signed her name. Caleb signed his right next to it. Mr. Harrison witnessed their signatures and said, "Congratulations. You are now equal partners in the Reed Ranch." Walking out into the sun, Evelyn felt dizzy. She owned land. She was legally protected. "Are you doing all right?" Caleb asked. "I think so. It is just so much. It is everything." She looked at him. "Saying thank you just does not feel like enough." "Then do not thank me. Just keep doing the work. That is all the thanks I need." While they were loading their wagon, Evelyn saw Thomas Brennan across the street. He was watching them. She met his stare without flinching. After a long moment, he turned and went into the saloon. "That man is still full of anger," Evelyn said. "Let him be. He has no power here anymore." But she felt a cold worry that Thomas was not done yet. She was right. It happened 3 days later. Evelyn was in the garden when she heard horses. This time it was the sheriff, and he looked serious. Caleb came out from the barn. "Sheriff Palmer, what business brings you out here? I need to speak with both you and Miss Harper." They met in the yard as the sheriff got off his horse. "I have a complaint filed against you. Thomas Brennan claims you assaulted him and are holding Miss Harper here against her will." Evelyn's stomach turned. "That is the most foolish thing I have ever heard. I am here by my own choice. Is that what you're telling me? He is not forcing you?" "The only person who ever forced me was Thomas Brennan. Mr. Reed has shown me nothing but respect." Sheriff Palmer looked between them. "Look, I do not generally believe a word that boy says, but his father is pushing for an investigation." "Then investigate," Caleb said in a calm voice. "Ask what you need to ask." The sheriff questioned them about how Evelyn came to the ranch and their arrangement. Evelyn told him the entire story, from the cruel bet to their new partnership. When she finished, Sheriff Palmer rubbed his face. "That is what I figured, but I had to ask. Had to be sure you were here on your own accord." "I am," she said. "And that partnership Mr. Reed mentioned, it is all legal and filed." The sheriff gave a slow nod. "All right, then. I will report there is no cause for the complaint. But, Miss Harper, you need to know, Thomas will not let this rest. A man's pride is a dangerous thing when it is wounded." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying watch your back. And if he tries anything else, you come get me. Do not handle it yourselves." After he rode off, the threat hung in the air. "He will not stop," Evelyn said. "No, he will not. Maybe I should just go, disappear where he cannot find me." Caleb turned, his voice like iron. "You are not going anywhere. This is your home now, your land. We are not letting Thomas Brennan run you off. But if you get hurt because of me, then I get hurt. But I'm not letting you run, Evelyn. Not when you have finally found a place to belong." She looked at his set jaw, seeing the pure determination in his eyes. Arguing was useless. He had made his choice to stand by her. "All right," she whispered, "we stand together." "Together," he vowed. That night, sleep would not come. Lying there, she thought about how much had changed. She came to Montana looking for a husband, but found a true partner. She expected a rescuer, and instead learned to save herself. And somewhere in the middle of it all, she had fallen in love with him. Not for what he could give her, but for the man he was. His quiet strength, his solid goodness, the way he saw her as an equal. The way he gave her room to become herself without asking for a thing in return. It scared her to death. Love had been a trap before. Thomas had written words of love, and they were all poison. But this feeling for Caleb was different. It was built on shared sunrises and hard work, on a trust earned one day at a time. She'd known folks who were broken and chose honesty. Now she had to wonder if Caleb felt the same, and if she had the grit to find out. That single thought kept Evelyn staring at the ceiling until the sky turned gray with the coming day. She loved Caleb Reed. It was not because he rode in like a hero, but because he gave her the room to be her own hero. It was not about grand gestures, but about every small promise he ever kept. The morning coffee he promised to brew, the broken fence he promised to teach her to fix, the equal partnership he promised would be theirs. When the rooster finally crowed, Evelyn knew what she had to do. She had to tell him, not because she wanted something back, but because their whole life together was built on truth. Hiding this felt like a crack in that very foundation. She dressed and walked toward the main house, her heart pounding a steady drum against her ribs. She saw him through the window, moving about the kitchen just as he did every morning. Seeing him so steady, so reliable, made her throat feel tight. She pushed the door open. He looked up, that quiet little smile on his face. "Mornin', coffee's on." "Caleb, I have to tell you something." The tone in her voice made him put down his work and give her his full attention. "All right." Evelyn had practiced this speech in her head a dozen times, but standing there with his eyes on her, all those carefully chosen words just vanished. "I love you," she said, plain and simple. "I don't know exactly when it happened, but somewhere between the fence posts and the late-night talks and the quiet time on the porch, I fell in love with you. I just needed you to know." Caleb stood there, completely still. For a long, quiet moment, he said nothing. Panic started to rise in her chest. She had read everything wrong. She had mistaken a business deal for something more, and ruined the one good thing she had. "I'm sorry," she said in a rush. "I should not have said that. This is not what you agreed to. I can go if—" "Evelyn." He crossed the kitchen in 3 quick strides and took both of her hands in his. "Just stop talking for a minute." She fell silent, hardly daring to breathe. "I have been in love with you for weeks," Caleb said, his voice low. "Maybe since that first day you stood up to Thomas in town. Or maybe it was the night you faced him down right here in this yard with nothing but your own courage. Or the morning I saw you working with blistered hands and not one word of complaint." "You have?" "I have. But I kept quiet because I did not want you to feel cornered. I never wanted you to think this partnership came with strings attached." His thumbs drew slow circles on her hands. "You have had enough of men who say one thing and mean another. I was not going to be another one of them." Tears started to fall down Evelyn's cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness. "So, what happens now?" "Now," he said, "we are honest about what we both want. And what I want, if you will have it, is a life with you. Not just as business partners, though we are good at that, but as man and wife, as 2 people who choose each other every day, not out of need, but because we are better together. Are you asking me to marry you?" Caleb finally smiled, a real smile that lit up his eyes. "I am asking you to think on it. No pressure and no rush. Just the idea of making this real, in every way that counts." Evelyn thought about the woman she was just 2 months ago. A woman getting off a train in a stranger's wedding dress. That woman was desperate for a place to belong. She was willing to take whatever scraps of kindness anyone offered. But that was not who she was anymore. She had rebuilt herself with calloused hands and honest words. She had faced her own demons and found out she was stronger than she ever knew. She finally understood the difference between needing a savior and choosing to stand with a good man. Yes, she said. Yes, I will marry you, not because I need to be rescued, but because I love you. I want to build a life with you, and I cannot imagine a better partner to do it with. Caleb pulled her into his arms, and she held on tight, feeling how solid and real he was. This was not some fairy tale. This was true, and it was built on trust and all the quiet moments they had shared. They just stood there for a long time, holding on in the warm kitchen as the morning sun streamed in. When they finally let go, they were both smiling. "We should probably do it soon," Caleb said. "Make it official before Thomas decides to cause more trouble." "You think he will?" "I know he will. A man like that does not just give up." Caleb's face grew serious. "But as my wife, you will have more legal standing, more protection, rights that no one can argue with. Then let's do it this week." They made the plans quickly. They spoke to the preacher in Cedar Ridge, who agreed to a Saturday ceremony. There would be no party and no guests. It would just be the two of them and a couple of witnesses, just like the law required. Evelyn wore a simple blue dress she had sewn herself. Caleb wore his Sunday best. Mrs. Patterson from the general store stood as one witness, looking both disapproving and a little impressed. Mr. Harrison, their lawyer, served as the other. The ceremony was short and to the point. The preacher spoke more about duty and partnership than he did about romance. When Caleb put the ring on her finger, his own mother's simple gold band, Evelyn felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was right. This was real. "I now pronounce you man and wife," the preacher declared. "You may kiss your bride." Caleb's kiss was gentle and sure, a quiet promise meant only for her. When they parted, she saw a look in his eyes that made her believe in tomorrow. They signed the paper, thanked the preacher, and walked out into the afternoon sun as husband and wife. The town watched them leave. Some folks were curious, some were judgmental. Evelyn found that she did not care one bit. She knew the truth of it. They were in the wagon heading out of town when they saw it. A thick column of black smoke rising against the blue sky, right from the direction of their ranch. Caleb saw it at the same moment she did, and his jaw tightened. "Hold on," he said, and snapped the reins. The horses jumped forward, and the wagon bounced hard down the rough road. Evelyn held on tight, her heart in her throat, as the pillar of smoke grew bigger and closer. "Please," she prayed, "not the house, not the barn." As they came over the last hill, her stomach dropped. It was the bunkhouse. Her bunkhouse. Flames were pouring out of the windows and roof. And standing right there in the yard, watching it all burn, were Thomas Brennan and 3 of his buddies. They were all holding torches. Caleb pulled the wagon to a halt and jumped down, grabbing the rifle from under the seat. Evelyn was right beside him, feeling a hot mix of fear and rage. "You have got about 5 seconds to start talking," Caleb said, his voice dangerously calm. Thomas turned around with a drunken grin. "Just doing a little spring cleaning. Figured the lady wouldn't need a bunkhouse now that she's keeping your bed warm." "You are burning down my property." "Our property, now that you're married, which means I am just burning down her property. Seems fair." Thomas stumbled forward. "You think putting a ring on her finger makes this right? You think it changes what she is?" "What I am," Evelyn said, stepping forward, "is the legal owner of this ranch. And what you are is a criminal who just committed arson right in front of witnesses." "Witnesses?" Thomas laughed, waving a hand at his friends. "These fellas will swear we were in town all day." "But I will not." The voice came from the road. Sheriff Palmer was riding up with 2 of his deputies. "Been keeping an eye on your place, Reed. Had a feeling Thomas might pull something after the wedding." Thomas's grin vanished. "You cannot prove a thing. Do not have to. I watched you do it." The sheriff swung down from his horse, his hand resting near his pistol. "Thomas Brennan, you are under arrest for arson and trespassing. You boys, too. My father, your father is not here, and even he cannot get you out of this." The sheriff nodded to his deputies. "Take them in." What happened next was a blur. Thomas's face twisted with pure rage. His hand dropped to his pistol. He drew the gun and brought it up, but he did not aim at Caleb or the sheriff. He aimed it straight at Evelyn. Time seemed to stop. She saw his finger tighten on the trigger. She saw the barrel of the gun pointed right at her heart, and she saw the hatred in his eyes. After everything she had been through, she was going to die right here, in her own yard, killed by a man who could not stand to lose. Two shots cracked the air at once. Caleb's bullet hit Thomas in the shoulder, spinning him. The sheriff's shot took him down in the leg. As Thomas fell, his pistol went off, the bullet kicking up dirt a good 5 feet from where Evelyn stood. Just like that, it was over. Deputies were on Thomas and his boys, clapping irons on them while he screamed it was not fair. Sheriff Palmer walked over to Evelyn, who stood there frozen with Caleb's arm tight around her. "You all right, Mrs. Reed?" Mrs. Reed. The name cut through her shock. It made everything real. "I am all right." "He would have killed you," the sheriff said, his voice grim. He looked at Caleb. "Good shooting. You could have ended him, but you did not." "Did not want to kill him," Caleb said. "Just wanted to stop him." "Well, he is stopped for good. Between the fire and this, Thomas Brennan is not going to be a problem for a long, long time." His name could not save him now. Once they were gone, Evelyn and Caleb just looked at the bunkhouse. It was gone completely. Nothing but smoke and timbers. Her bag, her few belongings, even her mother's wedding dress, all of it turned to ash. "I am sorry," Caleb said softly. "I know you had things in there that mattered." They were just things. She looked at the ruin and felt a strange sense of peace. "Besides, I do not need a separate bunkhouse anymore. I am your wife. My place is in our house." "Our house," Caleb repeated, testing the words on his tongue. "I surely do like the sound of that." They spent the rest of the night making sure the fire was truly out and calming the animals. By the time they were done, they were exhausted and covered in soot. They washed in the cold creek under the moonlight, then walked back to the house. Evelyn realized this was her wedding night. Not a girlish fantasy, but something real and hard-won. More precious. Caleb led her to their room, where she found he had already moved her belongings from the bunkhouse that very morning. He must have figured Thomas would come for it. "You knew," she breathed. "You knew he would burn it down." Caleb nodded grimly. "I had a feeling. A man like Thomas always aims to hurt you where you live. I reckoned he would try to take away the one place you made your own." He gently touched her cheek. "But you do not need that little building anymore. This whole ranch is yours. You have got me. And you have a future he can never lay a hand on." Evelyn leaned into his touch, feeling the solid strength in his hand. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." He kissed her softly. "And I give you my word, Evelyn. I will spend the rest of my days proving you made the right choice." In the quiet of their room, they listened to the ranch settle for the night. Far off, a coyote howled. The fire that had meant to break her was now just the last glowing ember of a life she was leaving behind. Thomas was sentenced to 5 years in the territorial prison. His own father, seeing the proof of his son's crimes, disowned him publicly to save the family's reputation. After that, the town started seeing Evelyn differently. She was not the humiliated mail-order bride anymore. She was the woman who stood up to her abuser and won. She was Caleb Reed's wife. Even Mrs. Patterson gave her a nod on the street. Slowly, Evelyn became part of the town. They put up a new barn where the bunkhouse once stood. Evelyn's garden grew, providing more than enough vegetables for the winter. The cattle got fat, the ranch did well, and every evening they sat on the porch and watched the sun go down. One night, about 6 months after they married, Evelyn was mending one of Caleb's shirts by the fire. The silence between them was easy and warm. "I am pregnant," she said, her eyes still on her needlework. Caleb's book hit the floor with a thud. "What did you say?" "I'm pregnant. I think for about 3, maybe 4 months." She finally looked up at him. "Are you happy?" In a heartbeat, he was kneeling beside her, his hands holding her face. "Happy, Evelyn?" His voice cracked with emotion. "I never dared to dream of this. A wife I love, a child, a real family. We are going to have a family," she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. "A true one, built on honesty and trust." They held each other as the fire burned low. She thought about the broken woman who had stepped off that train, believing she was worthless. That woman was gone for good. In her place was someone strong, someone who had learned that you have to save yourself, one hard choice at a time. Their daughter was born in the spring. She had Caleb's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn spirit. They named her Grace for the sister Caleb had lost, whose memory had pushed him to help Evelyn when she needed it most. Holding her baby on the porch that first evening, Evelyn watched the mountains turn to gold. Caleb's arm was solid around her. This was real. This was a life they had built together, piece by piece. "What is on your mind?" Caleb asked her. "I was just thinking about that day at the train station," she said, looking at Grace's tiny face. "It is strange how the very worst day of my life brought me to the best life I could ever have." "That is not strange," he said softly. "It just proves that some endings are just new beginnings. I was not brave back then. I was terrified. Being scared and doing it anyway," he said. "Well, that is the very definition of brave." They sat together as the first stars appeared, a family of 3. The ranch around them was a promise that had been kept. People in town still told their story, but it had changed. It was no longer a tale of shame. It became a story about a woman who found her dignity and a quiet man who understood that true strength is about giving someone the space to find their own. It was a story about a love that grew not from fancy words, but from shared work and honest respect. Years from now, Evelyn would tell Grace the whole story. Not to scare her, but to teach her that she was stronger than she would ever know. She would teach her that public shame could be a new beginning, and that real love is a partnership between 2 people who choose each other, day after day. But for tonight, Evelyn just held her daughter close, leaned against her husband, and believed in the future she had built with her own 2 hands. The family grew, with another daughter and then a son. The partnership between Caleb and Evelyn was stronger than any hardship. Sometimes Evelyn would think of Thomas Brennan, a man whose reputation followed him from town to town. She no longer felt any hate for him. He had tried to ruin her, and he had failed. That was enough. What he intended for her ruin had become the very foundation of her life. The public shame taught her that other people's opinions did not define her. The betrayal showed her what real trust looked like. His cruelty made her see the value of true kindness. Hitting rock bottom on that train platform led her straight to Caleb Reed. He gave her the safety to become the person she was always meant to be, a strong woman who knew her own worth. The sun set, painting the sky with color as the ranch grew quiet for the evening. Evelyn Harper Reed was no longer the woman who had been broken. She was the woman who had rebuilt herself into something that could never be shattered. She looked at her family, her land, and her life, and she knew with a deep and peaceful certainty that she was home. Not because a man had rescued her, but because she had rescued herself, one brave decision at a time, until all the broken pieces came together to make something beautiful and whole. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.